So we've been looking at how do things like the Guyana tragedy and other cult deaths and 9/11 and things like that happen. So we've been going over some really powerful social psychology principles, and we went over social roles was the section previous to this. But now I want to go over obedience. This is another one that's probably going to knock your socks off. So obedience is the willingness to do something because someone else tells us to. So let me ask you guys, how many of you, if you went in and were doing an experiment, how many of you would probably push buttons in order to hurt someone just because someone told you to? So I'm sure a lot of you would say, no, I wouldn't. So let me just ask you about the average person. What type of, what percentage of people do you think would be willing to like really, really harm another person because someone else told them to? So this is I don't know what you came up with, but this is what we're going to show you right here is we're going to do Milgram's obedience study. And at this study, what you had was you're going to see much more here, is you had a big machine with lots of buttons on it. And you had two people that came in to the research study. So they had both signed up for a research study. They were together in the waiting room. One was assigned as the learner and one was assigned as the experimenter. And so the experimenter was positioned in front of this big machine with lots of buttons and things on it. And the person that was the learner was put in another room that you could hear but you couldn't see. And so each time that the learner made a mistake, the experimenter was told to, you must press this button to give a shock. And so the more that the experiment goes on, the more and more painful the shocks were. So in the beginning of the experiment, you might just hear the person saying, ow, ow. Um, but then as the experiment went on, then you'd hear the learner really screaming like, oh my gosh, this really hurts. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. And then the final shock, if you go up the machine, was an XXX. And what you would hear is, in Milgram's famous experiment, is you heard the person screaming, ah! And then it just went totally silent. And so he was testing to see how many people would be willing to give more and more painful shocks all the way up to the XXX. And he found that 65% of people were would give the XXX, would not stop the experiment, would not challenge authority. And so usually when I tell them, I really go into this in my face-to-face classes. I act it out and I show it to them. But you guys can't see me, and I'm not going to do the whole dramatization here, so I have a couple videos to show you. But usually what I get back to me in my face-to-face classes is, Amy, yeah, that happened back then, but now we're much more independent today. It wouldn't happen today. And so what I've done, since I'm not acting this out and I don't really have a lot of visuals for you here, is I went and I found two videos. So one is where they recreated the video today to see if it would happen again today, but they put it in a more mild form. But then the other video that I wanted to show you, and so what you're going to see is you'll see this guy and he seems to act just exactly the same way as what they did in the past. But then I wanted to show you another video that I found where you did see some people say, I'm not willing to do this. And the reason why I feel that it's important to show you that video is because what I'm hoping comes out of this whole thing is I'm hoping that you guys really start to question, what other people are influencing us to do. And so I feel like by showing you this video where people did say, no, I'm not going to do this, then that kind of gives us a model to say, wait a second, I've seen this happen before. I'm going to stand up to authority. Okay, thanks for playing along. Take a look at the study in your book and watch these videos.
Imagine this scenario. You go to a prestigious university to participate in a learning and memory experiment. When you arrive, you discover that the teaching instrument is this machine, which seems to give electroshocks to a man on the other side of the wall. As you move up the scale, he begins to scream out in pain.
The experiment requires that you continue.
The experimenter pressures you to go on. Would you agree to continue? That's all. 45 years ago, Dr. Stanley Milgram came up with this experiment to test whether people would blindly follow the orders of an authority figure. He found that two-thirds of his subjects were willing to give the most dangerous shock on the machine. We teamed up with Dr. Jerry Berger, a social psychologist at Santa Clara University in California, to see whether people have changed since then.
Wrong. 90 volts.
The typical response is to turn toward the experimenter and, if not say something, at least give a look that says, what should I do?
In our new experiment, how many people would agree to follow the orders of an authority figure?
Ow. That's incorrect.
39-year-old Troy Shasker is an electrician. He's been paid $50 to participate and told that the money is his to keep even if he quits the experiment early. He's worried about the dangers of the electroshock machine.
I don't think shock him that hard if he really does screw up. That's severe shock. There are 25. I could just go get my shotgun. There are 20.
In the room next door, Troy watches as the learner gets strapped into his chair and really gets nervous once he hears him say this.
I should probably bring up a couple of years ago at Kaiser, they diagnosed a mild heart condition. I'm really not too worried about it. It's not that serious, but
Well, you should know that while the shocks that we'll be using today may be painful, they're not dangerous. Okay?
Milgram intended that scripted exchange to set up a conflict in the subject's mind, a choice between the health of the learner and the authority of the experimenter.
Number 1.
Then the test begins.
Blue, boy, girl, grass, hat.
The learner must decide which of the 4 words is the correct match. At first, everything goes smoothly.
Correct.
I was confident that he was doing really good at first, and then it started looking bad.
Then, at 75 volts, Troy hears the first sign of trouble.
Soft, rug, pillow, hair, grass. Incorrect. 75 volts.
I could actually hear him next door going, ow, oh, and he kept getting things wrong.
Incorrect. 90 volts.
At 105 volts, he's clearly uneasy.
I got a little moist on my forehead there. I wasn't comfortable. I can't tell you why I listened to him and kept going. I should have just said no.
The correct word was duck. Rock, house.
At 150 volts,
Incorrect. 150 volts.
will Troy listen as the learner begs him to stop, or will he follow Brian's orders?
Probably the correct word, parrot white. The correct word was white horse. Next item. Please continue. The next item is sad.
He obeys the orders.
Face.
Why didn't you stop?
I saw him getting strapped in, and they were just like little. I mean, he could have just, if he was in that much pain, he could have just tore himself off.
Why are you putting it on him and not you or the experimenter?
I was just doing my job. I was doing what I was supposed to do.
75 volts.
So I guess the influence of having the conductor of the experiment right there next to me, telling me to keep going, had a lot to do with it.
For the past 30 years, there have been severe restrictions on using humans in social psychology research. To avoid putting subjects under too much stress, Dr. Berger made a significant change to our experiment.
in this experiment you stopped at 150 make-believe volts. In Milgram they went much higher.
We stopped for ethical reasons. We couldn't put people through the agony that Milgram's participants went through.
I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now.
Are there clues that indicate whether certain people might be more compliant with authority?
Wrong. 90 volts.
When you were watching, how good were you at guessing? Oh, this person may go or this may not.
It was impossible to tell. I tried to guess. I tried to look for signs, body language, anything to try to guess who's going to continue and who's going to stop. And that tells me that it's not that there are certain kinds of people who are obviously different from the rest of us. It tells me that probably all of us are capable.
Thanks for watching our primetime webcast, and be sure to watch again next week at abcnews.com. I'm Chris Cuomo.
Of unfilmed academic research at a university and nothing to do with the show. supposedly looking into the effects of punishment on learning. And they believe now that this is part of their growth.
In fact, it was a reenactment of a powerful experiment conducted by Stanley Milgram in 1963 to look at how normal people can commit atrocious acts simply because they're following orders. Milgram's parents were Jewish refugees in World War II, and his pioneering work speaks volumes about the nature of responsibility. It's being filmed with covert cameras.
Thank you.
They're introduced to an actor pretending to be another participant.
You didn't come from the same room? No, you don't know each other. No. We don't actually know how punishment affects learning.
After a brief introduction, our subjects are tricked into thinking they've chosen their role as teachers in the experiment.
And if you could just tell me what your positions are? Learner and teacher. Learner.
Our subjects observe the learner being instructed by the scientist, who is just another actor.
This electrode is connected to a generator in the second room where we go with the teacher. Okay. Just make sure that we have a good contact with the skin and so it doesn't cause any blistering and burning. Is that comfortable?
That's okay.
Yeah, we just place these straps around your arms to avoid any excess movement. Those aren't too tight.
No, that's okay.
No. The teacher will read out some word pairs to you. Blue girl.
The learner is told he's going to be asked a series of memory questions by the teacher. He will have to word pairs and then correctly remember them when offered multiple choices.
If the answer is incorrect, you will receive an electric shock.
The teacher is then taken next door and shown the generator, which ranges from 15 volts all the way up to a lethal 450 volts. The domestic electricity supply in the UK is of course 240 volts. Our teachers are given the list of questions and told to increase the voltage each time the learner gets a question wrong. They are then given an example of a low voltage shock.
And try and estimate in volts the amount of shock you feel you're getting.
Okay.
Do you know how much that was?
Enough.
75.
It was actually 45.
Oh my God.
Teacher, begin.
Shoe, horn.
Steam.
The point of this test is to see whether the teachers, our subjects, will call a stop to the experiment or continue to the point where they are administering seemingly lethal electric shocks to the victim simply because the scientist is telling them to.
That's correct. The next word is bicycle. The options tyre, race, helmet, shorts. That's incorrect, so there'll be 120 volts. I don't think I want to do this anymore.
If you could continue, please, teacher.
There is. No, I don't think I'm going to do it anymore.
The experiment requires you to continue.
Yeah, even so, I don't think I'm going to do it anymore. Correct.
According to plan, our accomplice provided many wrong answers. Each protest was coordinated to a particular shock voltage on the generator, and his responses were played via a CD.
That's wrong, 150 volts. The correct answer is Captain Shoe.
Cup.
That's wrong. 225 volts. He's in a lot of pain.
Continue, please.
But he's not comfortable.
We must continue to the end of the experiment. Whether the learner likes it or not, he has to go on until he's learned the words correctly.
Okay. Forest. That's wrong, 240 volts. Are you sure this is not causing
they're not harmful. Sorry, I'm not getting you. When you say that they might be painful but not harmful,
It causes no long-term damage.
okay, so does that mean that it doesn't leave any scars?
It causes no damage.
That seems very cold and calculated to me. This doesn't seem like a very... Anyway, golden. That's wrong, mate. 300 volts. Staple. The options are diet, jar, balcony, and bowl.
If the learner doesn't answer in a reasonable time, say 4 to 5 seconds, then you have to treat the answer as wrong and follow that procedure.
Did you hear that, learner? Just any response, mate. Come on. Wild guess.
Please continue.
345 volts if you're still with me. I'm sorry. I can't do this, honestly. Can we stop this experiment? Because I can't do this.
If you don't continue, we'll have to discontinue the experiment.
Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine. I'm not going to do this.
Incorrect. 405 volts. Sorry, I don't know. Someone will check on him. It says he's not making any noise now, and he was before. And I'm quite happy to go on, but I'm a bit worried about.
You should continue.
Yeah, I'm just a bit worried because he was like complaining before about the.
But no harm will come to
But
him.
he's not making any noise now.
It's essential that we continue with the experiment.
Balcony. Incorrect. 450 volts. We promise he's not. It won't.
Please continue with the procedure.
You said it hurts, but it isn't. Because it's like. It says they're dangerous. It'll be alright. Yeah.
Please continue. Okay, I think we'll discontinue the experiment now.
All of the subjects were told the true nature of the experiment was to see how they would respond to authority, and that it would eventually form part of this show.
It is okay.
I can tell you, yeah, he's absolutely fine. You actually weren't administering electric shocks to him at all. He is.
In the original Milgram experiment, psychologists were asked to predict how many people would continue to the point that they were administering the highest shock on board. Their prediction was 1/10 of 1%. They were wrong. The results of our experiment were almost identical to the original. Over 50% of participants continued up to 450 volts. The majority of people will administer lethal electric shocks just because a guy in a white coat is telling them to.
450 volts.
450 volts.
450 volts.
450.
So after the results of the Milgram experiment, I've now chosen my 4 subjects that will go forward for the heist.
And I'll listen for it.
Phil was impressively resourceful when he was caught stealing sweets, and held in his anguish during the Milgram than Defy the Scientist. I did want to include a woman in the group. Jen was the only subject to take a long time to recover after the Milgram experiment, so I felt I shouldn't use her. Veronica didn't steal from the shop, so that left Vicky. Of all the subjects, she was the only one to have known the original Milgram experiment and call a halt to her involvement in it.
Can I just say, I can't do this because I've heard of this experiment before.
So I think she'll be quite interesting to use, although I don't know if she'll actually take the bait or not. Ali stole most from the shop, seems to be highly responsive, most outgoing, and seemed most happy to continue the experiment until he was stopped.
Well, shouldn't it have made more notches on the thing?
I'm sorry.
Danny stopped the experiment, but in such an outspoken way that I suspected he would have real strength of character to bring out.
It's not even reacting anymore.